Grace Whitlock arrived in the frontier town of Silver Ridge with a small suitcase, a worn-out medical satchel, and a reputation she never asked for. Back east, every hospital she worked in said she was too gentle for trauma and too stubborn for rules, a combination that got her dismissed more times than she could count. But Grace wasn't chasing anyone's approval anymore. She had come west for a fresh start, a place where no one knew her past and where her compassion might be needed. The town was rough, dusty, stitched together by miners, ranchers, and drifters who lived by grit and instinct more than law. People didn't believe in her here either, at least not yet. The doctor she apprenticed under barely looked at her, giving her the simplest tasks. "You'll last a week," he muttered on her first day. But Grace didn't argue. She watched, learned, and quietly proved her skill whenever she could. She treated children with fevers, miners with broken fingers, and ranch wives exhausted from long winters. Slowly, a whisper spread across town that the new nurse had hands like calm water and a heart that didn't quit. But none of that mattered on the night the storm rolled in, the night the man everyone feared was brought to her doorstep, half dead. The saloon doors had slammed open, and two ranch hands dragged in a blood-covered mountain man, the one they called Bareback Holden, known for living alone in the high country, surviving things no ordinary man should. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that usually burned like wildfire, but now they were dulled by pain and exhaustion. His body was torn by claw marks, bruises, and a long gash across his chest. Some said he fought off a cougar to save a rancher's child. Others swore he'd been ambushed by outlaws who wanted his land. No one knew the truth, and Holden wasn't speaking. The doctor took one look at him and stepped back. "He won't last the hour," he whispered. "We can't save him." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Holden was tough as iron, but even iron could break. Grace felt something in her chest twist, an instinct, a pull she couldn't explain. She stepped forward. "I'll take him," she said, her voice steady but soft. The doctor scoffed. "You? He needs a miracle, not kindness." But Grace had already knelt beside the wounded man. She saw past the blood, past the dirt, past the legend. She saw a man who had fought for his life and deserved someone to fight for it with him. For the first time, Holden's eyes met hers, weak, but searching, and in that blink of connection, Grace felt something shift in her soul like destiny brushing her cheek. She worked through the night in the old log cabin near the fire, refusing sleep, refusing fear, refusing doubt. She cleaned the wounds. She stitched the gash. She whispered encouragement he probably couldn't even hear. When his breathing slowed, she pressed her forehead against his and prayed, something she hadn't done since she was a child. The wind outside howled like the mountains themselves were watching. The fire crackled. Holden drifted in and out of consciousness. At one point he mumbled, Why are you helping me?" Grace didn't know how to explain it. She simply said, "Because you deserve to live." No one had ever said those words to Holden before. He had lived most of his life alone, unclaimed by anyone, unseen except for his strength. As dawn broke over the snowy peaks outside the cabin window, Grace kept working, fighting for him harder than she had ever fought for anyone. And when Holden finally opened his eyes fully, clearer, brighter, alive, she felt relief so intense she nearly cried. The doctor returned, shocked to find the impossible patient breathing strong. How did you?" Grace simply shrugged, too tired to stand. Holden looked at her, really looked at her, and whispered with a low rasp, "You saved me when everyone else gave up." "Why?" Grace swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. But something in his gaze made her realize they were both people the world had failed until now. And without knowing it yet, the Wild West was about to witness a love powerful enough to rewrite their fates. A love that no hardship, no storm, and no enemy would be able to break. Holden recovered slowly but fiercely, just as Grace suspected he would. He wasn't a man who stayed down long, not in life, not in spirit. But as his strength returned, something else grew alongside it. A quiet, steady affection for the woman who refused to let him die. Holden had survived years alone in the wilderness, fighting animals, nature, and sometimes even men. But he had never faced anything like Grace Whitlock, gentle in hand, fearless in heart. Each day she checked his wounds with a patient touch. Each night they spoke in quiet tones by the fire. Holden told her stories of growing up fatherless, learning to survive in the mountains, building a cabin with his own hands. Grace told him about her past failures, the hospitals that rejected her, the loneliness she carried like an old scar. Holden gripped her hand one night and said, "They didn't fail you, Grace. They didn't deserve you." No one had ever spoken to her like that before. And as the snow melted outside, something warm began melting between them too. Soft, slow, but undeniable. But the world beyond their cabin wasn't as gentle as their growing bond. Rumors spread through Silver Ridge that the outlaws who attacked Holden wanted him dead for witnessing, something he shouldn't have. Soon enough, black-hatted riders crept through town asking questions, leaving fear in their wake. Holden insisted on leaving Grace to keep her safe, but she refused. "If danger is coming," she said, "then I'll stand with you. Not behind you." He looked at her with both awe and terror because he had survived countless threats, but he wasn't sure he could survive losing her. One evening, as the sky turned copper with sunset, gunshots cracked through the pines. Grace rushed outside to find Holden standing in front of her, shielding her with his body as the outlaws descended. Holden fought with the fury of a man who had finally found something worth protecting. And Grace, shaking but brave, helped drag him to cover, loading bullets the way he taught her. When the final outlaw fell, breathing heavily in the dirt, Holden collapsed to his knees. Grace threw her arms around him, sobbing. He whispered into her hair, "You're the first person I've ever been afraid to lose." After that night, their bond became unbreakable. Grace healed his new wounds, and Holden helped her feel safe in a world that had once rejected her. The town of Silver Ridge, once skeptical of Grace, now admired her courage and resilience. They saw how she stood by the man everyone feared, how she saved a life no one else dared to try for. And they saw how Holden, the wild mountain man, softened around her like stone warming under morning light. Love in the Wild West wasn't gentle, not like in fairy tales. It was forged in storms, in blood, in firelight, and theirs was no different. Yet it was stronger for it. One spring morning, Holden stood in her doorway wearing a clean shirt he clearly hated and holding a small carved box. "Grace," he said, voice rough with emotion, "the mountains taught me to survive, but you taught me how to live." Inside the box was a ring carved from elk antler, simple but beautiful. She cried as he slid it onto her finger. Their love story wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, raw, fearless, and powerful enough to defy every hardship the Wild West hurled at them. And when the wind blew through Silver Ridge, people swore they could hear the echo of their laughter mingling with the mountains, the nurse everyone failed, and the man everyone feared, proving that some loves are not just chosen, they're destined